I'm joined to tell you about our amazing panel that we are going to have a provider panel. A self-advocacy panel from student-led IEPs to person-centered planning. All of our bios for our panel can be found on the Padlet, and the titles for each person as well. So we are having 6 panelists who've been joined us to share their personal and professional journeys with self-advocacy. Self-advocacy has historically been a really incredibly important part of civil rights for people with developmental disabilities. And additionally, at the individual level, self-advocacy is often required to access important services, as we learned in the last talk. These incredible panel members will talk about their own experiences with advocacy, and we'll hear about helpful resources and strategies to intentionally teach and support self-advocacy. So I would like to begin by introducing our moderator for this panel, Benita Shaw. Benita is a proud mother of 2 young men, one of whom is on the autism spectrum. Ms. Shaw, we are happy to say, works as a community education specialist at the UC Davis Mind Institute in our Resource and Community Engagement Center. If you've called or emailed, you've probably gotten the wonderful opportunity to talk with her. She's a facilitator of the Sankofa Parent Support Group at the Mind Institute, and she's a board member of the Supported Life Institute, as well as the Disability Rights Education and Defense Fund, DREDA. She serves on the advisory committees for the State Council on Developmental Disabilities and Alta Regional Center Self-Determination Group. After many years of advocating for her son, she founded the GIFTS Foundation, which stands for Give Information and Support for Families to Triumph Successfully. She founded GIFT in 2017 as a nonprofit organization. Not sure how she does all this and does it all so well. She has 2 Associates of Arts degrees, one in Human Services and the other in Drug and Alcohol Counseling, and a Bachelor's of Science degree in Psychology and Ethics. She is well suited to talk today and moderate our panel, which includes Tracy Evanson, Ethan Grecian, Gina Grecian, Jackie Ryan, Kristen, Uliasz, and Jenny Ling Yang. And I apologize that you can't see their names up on the screen, but all the information is in the Padlet, and I will now pass it along to Benita. Thank you.
And Alvin, thank you for pronouncing everybody's name, because I will tell you the first thing I was nervous about is making sure I said you guys' name correctly. So thank you, Alvin, for doing that. It's also an honor to be a part of UC Davis Mind Institute. If you could say when you grow up, you had a dream job, that was one of them. So I want to thank you all for wherever you're calling from or coming in from. If it's here, and I'd say good morning. If it's somewhere else, I'd say good afternoon. And I thank you for taking the time for being with us today. And to the panelists, I thank you all for being here and taking the time to be here today. I think we're going to have an amazing time conversating with one another. So we're going to kind of get started, but I want to thank you guys for doing that. We'll, go into initially sharing who everybody is, have an in-depth conversation with people individually and answer questions. Those of you out in the audience, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. If it's to a particular person, make sure you notate that, who that particular person is. So when we get time for that, we can, I will do my best to get to that, if that's okay. And then to the panelists, I'll make sure that I keep time-wise, and I'll try to say at the last one, this is kind of our last question, because it's important that we make sure we get everybody in there, right? So I'm really excited. So I hope you guys feel my excitement since we're on Zoom. Hey! So let's get started. And we're going to start off with Gina and Ethan. So I'm going to read to you a little bit about them, and we're going to kind of go into that, okay? You guys who are on here, if you choose to want to go off camera, you're welcome. We prefer to see you on camera to see your beautiful faces, but we understand we all multitask, right? All righty. So we're going to go in to discuss a little bit about Ethan and Gina. So Gina is an executive director of Roswell Family Empowerment of Northern California. She is also known as Ethan's mom. Roswell Family Empowerment Panel. Empowerment is a parent-founded and parent-driven nonprofit organization serving 19 counties in Northern California. They provide support, information, and training for families and children of diverse disabilities. The ultimate goal is to provide parents with skills and education necessary to become positive advocates for their children and raise empowered children to become self-advocates in all settings throughout their life. Now, to the handsome gentleman that's next to her is her son she gave birth to, right? Obviously, that's right, right? That is Ethan. So he is a young man with autism who has been participating in his person-centered plan since he was diagnosed in 1996. He is an artist, loves writing letters to his friends, and enjoys working hard at his job. His favorite things are the Nutcracker. Wow, that's aging because I enjoyed that. Sorry. Dragons, shopping, and going to Disneyland. Right, so let's get started with Gina, Ethan. And if there's anything that you, Ethan, if you feel that you don't want to answer, just kind of tap your mom. I'm pretty sure she'll take over. So we're going to start with you. So I'm going to ask you, tell us a little bit about your job.
It's a peaceful, quiet program.
Yes.
It used to be a noisy other program.
Yes, but tell them about you.
I like to work hard.
Tell me a little bit more about it.
And get money checks and save money to save. For money for fun, vacations, and buy things I need from the store.
Nice, nice. So do you enjoy what you do?
Enjoy what I do. That's a question about Ethan.
Yeah.
Yes, that is. So you do enjoy what you do?
Yes. What would that be? I like how it's like Ethan Haney.
Yeah.
Nice. So can I ask you a few more questions?
Talking with the guys about with Nathan Todd, Nathan Decker, Chris.
And what do you do at your job?
I either start like stocking stuff for Jeannie,
Yeah, and
stocking the sweeteners for Jeannie,
what do you put in the bag?
like stapling the white bags,
Yeah, but you put things in bags.
helping with Roger H,
You put food in bags.
putting in the bags, helping the fresh produce
That's right. And where do the bags go?
with the special need people.
Yeah, to help feed people that have to stay home,
Try to
right?
stay home, be our picky eaters.
They might be picky eaters.
I love that.
And you know, why is having a job and making money important to you?
Important to Ethan.
Yeah, why?
I had to do money management to practice, like I do with Darlene a long time ago.
Yeah, and you save your money for what?
For vacations and go shopping, like yard sales and garage sales.
Oh yes, but also to shop for things you need.
Shop things I need, spend my money on things to save, change in the safe.
Yeah.
I want things on my Christmas list,
Oh,
birthday list, Easter list.
oh yes, you have lots of lists.
I save money for Disneyland and have fun on vacation.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is awesome. Can I go to Disneyland with you next time?
She likes it silly.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so. I think she's serious.
She's kind of serious.
Yeah. You
She likes it
know,
silly.
what kind of things do you like to do for fun when you're not at work?
I like to draw pictures on the internet and share my art with other people and doing things for others and
And
write words, like writing a story.
you like to write letters to your friends?
Yeah, these finger space between words.
That's right. And because after graduation, some of your friends
Got
went off-
moved away, went out to college,
That's right. So you keep in touch with them by
writing people back.
That's right.
Ethan about Ethan Haney.
That's right.
Ethan, I think that's amazing because, you know, these days we don't write like we used to. So I think that is phenomenal that you take the time to write to your friends. That is
Yes,
really kind of you.
Yeah. Another
Yes.
thing you spend your money on is you work hard for stamps, right?
Stands from Bird's house.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So Ethan, can I ask your mom a few questions? Is that okay?
Mommy.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and go with Miss Jennifer?
Sure, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Hi, Mom.
He's waving.
So, you know, we have a few more questions just for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
And so, and then you collaborate however you feel, totally up to you. So I'm going to start with a few that we have. One of it is, what age did Ethan start participating in his IEP and IPP? And I forgot. So those of you who are trying not to use acronyms. So individual education plan, and the IPP was individual person plan program. Is that right? I get
Individualized
confused.
program
Yes.
plan, yeah.
Thank you.
So he started, I started taking him from the very beginning, right? I didn't want people making decisions for him without him present. So it was always about taking him to every meeting so he could get used to the atmosphere and what it felt like, even if the engagement was only for a moment. I just wanted it to be a positive experience for him and not a negative experience. So there was always a person I brought with me that could take him when he was done. And so I knew that over the span of several years, the ultimate goal would be him advocating for his own needs and directing his own path. So by always having him at the table and participating in any way he could was that plan. So over the years, and it took many years to teach him the importance of making his own decisions rather than others making those decisions for him. I supported his choices and I helped him recognize his strengths and when to ask for help. And asking for help was the hardest. It was the whole team letting him know, oh, I see you need help with that. And then having him recognize that in order for him to realize that that's at the point where he needed to have help with whatever that was. And at the meetings, as he continued to go and grow, he was always given the opportunity to talk first about his preferred activities and his strengths, because that was always what made him happy, as you could see when he was talking about the things he liked to do. And then the team would also highlight those strengths. And then that would make him feel like he was listened to. And then they would also talk about the areas where he could use more support. And then he would just, feel like he was heard and included. And then over time, he became more aware of his personal goals and the accommodations he needed to succeed. So short answer is from the beginning to the end, he was at every meeting.
Yeah. Well, there's a question that kind of, when Elizabeth was speaking about, that kind of want to pose to you when she talks about how they have a different community and everybody coming together. And this is one of the in-depth questions that I want to ask before we kind of move on, because I think it's important off of what she stated. And it says here, and it says, how do you get all the professionals on the team, where it talks about the school, the therapist, regional center, right? And we had all those dots, right? And then to collaborate with working together to create a whole person approach, leading the self-determined and self-advocacy for him.
Okay, so
I know it was a big one.
Being creative is really the key, right? Ethan was in general education throughout all of his years. And so at the IEPs, there was only generally one general education teacher that would attend the IEP meeting. So throughout the years, I'd always take Ethan ahead of time to meet his teachers. And I would share, the specific goals and accommodations that were on this IEP with all the general education teachers. And that would give Ethan the opportunity to meet the people, the teachers that he would be in their classes, and it gave the teachers the opportunity to meet Ethan and become familiar with him. And then throughout all those years, during his senior year, the team was talking about, electives, and Ethan spoke up and said, that he wanted to work in the office. That's what he wanted to do. And so this is where the creative aspect of things came into play. They said, okay, we do have an opportunity in the office, but it's during your speech therapy time. And the speech therapist said, hey, that's actually perfect. He can work in the office. I'll go to the office. I'll work on those speech goals with him in a natural setting with his peers. And because of that opportunity, he was more included throughout campus, because those peers use those skills that they learned from the speech therapist to include him in throughout all aspects of the campus. And then later on that year, the ROP teacher, who was very creative, found him an off-campus opportunity. And that off-campus opportunity was at a grammar school, working in the office, and was just down the hill. And they were able to get him there for that period of time. And throughout that rest of that senior year, he worked there. And at the end of his senior year, the grammar school said, hey, this is great. We love having you here. You're a great helper. Can you come back after you graduate and work here? So I'm like, oh, yeah, this is this great opportunity for him. So we called for a meeting, and at that meeting, the service coordinator from Regional Center came, and Ethan said, I want to be the boss of my IEP. I want to run my IEP. We're like, oh, okay. So we pulled all of his entire team in. The SDC teacher, the general ed teacher, the speech therapist, and throughout that year prior to his exit IEP, the general education teacher gave him more opportunities for public speaking. The speech therapist, along with the SDC teacher, put together this template, this guide for him, where he would fill in his strengths, where he needed help, what he wanted to do after high school, his goals. And so at that exit IEP, he facilitated it from the beginning to the end. He ran the agenda. He paused for others to speak. And he even gave a PowerPoint presentation called My Life, My Way.
Oh.
And at that presentation, he just talked about what he wanted to do.
I'm there with you. Oh my God. Didn't that just give you such joy? Oh my God.
And it was a long time ago. We're talking 2013 he graduated, and he worked at that school up until the pandemic.
You guys got to give us a minute. It's mommy, and these tears are like, oh my God. It gives all of us joy when we can hear something from another mom. It just, we're in that with you. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm a crybaby, so don't cry, Gina. Don't do it.
That was basically from kindergarten to high school in like 5 minutes, right? So,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, so can I ask you one more question before we go in? Just one more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just so you know, this will probably be the last, hopefully this will be the last one since we're coming out of the pandemic, right? So
geez.
With the pandemic, can you kind of briefly share with us, what affected Ethan for his program-wise with his life, and, anything tips you can give for families who are out there that would help? Because I think it was a obstacle for all of us, right?
It really was an obstacle. Because, he worked in the school, so then the school's closed down, right? So he kind of lost his job that he advocated so much for. Hard to talk. But now he has a new job in the pantry, and he really enjoys it. So it took the service coordinator to be creative and finding him an opportunity to work in a environment that was considered essential, that got to stay open during the pandemic. So again, it was him advocating with his service coordinator, saying, Ethan doesn't want to stay home, Ethan wants to work. So they found a position for him at it's a work program, Regional Center supports, and so he was able to through COVID restrictions work in this program and kind of do the things he was doing at the schools.
Mm-hmm.
He helps in the office there with shredding and filing and other things, but then he also helps put together food bags for individuals with disabilities that are homebound, who can't leave their homes. So he really enjoys it. He's been doing that for now 2 years, right, through the pandemic and to this point. And the biggest difference is now, before it was more volunteer work that he did at the schools, and now he's getting a paycheck, and he makes really good money. So he's, his Social Security is, he's less dependent on Social Security, more independent by having his own money coming in, and doing money management with an independence facilitator, and learning to navigate his adult life. So if there's something positive that came out of the darn pandemic, that's it. He now works, and he's being able to be more independent.
Well, thank you. I know that was a quick synopsis for all those years, but I'm really grateful. You tell him, since he had to run off, we enjoyed hearing him and listening to them. And thank you for taking the time to be with us today. So please hang on, because we know afterwards we'll have questions for everybody. Okay. Thank you.
My speed talking.
That's what it felt like, huh? All right, so we're going to move on to our next panelist. You guys forgive us, everybody has a lot of rich information. So I'm going to introduce Kristen. And Kristen, you have to pronounce your name for me after I introduce, because I don't want to chop that up, right? She is an inclusion specialist for special education case manager at the Vinci High School in Davis, California. She worked with students with wide varieties of disabilities for 20 years. 20 years working with high school age young adult students for the majority of her time. She aims to provide meaningful education opportunities for all students while advancing their self-determination, self-advocacy, communication, collaboration skills through access of rich project-based learning environment and by centering their voices. Kristen believes student-led IEPs can transform IEP processes in the best way possible and has seen firsthand how it can be springboard for students to take more ownership over their education and lives. And in addition to teaching, she facilitates trainings for teachers around inclusive education, student-led IEPs, project-based learning. Kristen also has 4 young children at home to keep her quite busy. Welcome today. So we're going to start off with a few questions. The first one is that can you tell us a little bit about your journey as an educator to student-led IEPs, and why did you make a shift from student-led IEPs?
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Benita. And my name is pronounced Kristen Uliasz. I go by Miss U as a teacher, right? Because it's easier than it looks. But thanks for the lovely introduction. Yeah, so I've been teaching, I just finished my 17th year, going into my 18th year of teaching. And I've been teaching at a high school level at Vinci Charter Academy in Davis, a project-based learning school, for the last 13 years. And, you know, it wasn't until probably about 7 years ago that I really made a big shift in doing what I call student-led IEPs, and have grown since then. Every year, I think I get a little bit better at it. And it took me, it's embarrassing to me in a way that it took me so long to come to this realization that needed to happen, because it is a really, it's a simple shift. It's not an easy shift, but it's a simple shift to kind of center the voices of students. It's something that I've always, even previously, had tried to make sure students' voices were a part of the meeting, but I think I was always intimidated by the idea that, oh, well, they must have to take over everything. There must be this bar. It's way up here to call it a student-led IEP. And but I work in, as I mentioned, a project-based learning school. And so I have a lot of students. It's fully inclusive. So my students with, you know, a wide range of support needs, they do presentations a lot. They work in teams a lot. They have to advocate and communicate for their needs and their strengths and what they want and what they're going to do. And they're pretty used to presenting information orally, or with or with communication devices, but with, you know, Google Slides or something like that. And within that network, I was exposed to a lot of different, or am exposed to a lot of different and really cool educational practices. So I started getting exposed to things like student-led conferences happening at the elementary level, graduate portfolio defenses happening at the high school level, where students were really the ones presenting their own work. And I thought, what more authentic audience is there than the student, than an IEP meeting, right? Students presenting to their own team members, to their own teachers, to their parents sometimes, right? I mean, all the time their parents are at the meeting, but sometimes they're sharing new information with their parents about what they want to do after high school, when they have their voice at the table kind of being centered. So I sort of took the plunge and just decided I'm going to do, if student-led conferences happen in 2nd grade, I can make student-led IEPs happen, and let's figure out how to make this work.
Nice. I like that. And I think that a lot of the challenges when you speak about, especially when you have children or students who use a device and what have you, it could be a challenge and people don't see them doing that, viewing student-led IEPs. So this is going to kind of be a twofold as I put it together, but I think you can relate to that, because it's also talking about who can do it. But in that, the barriers and challenges, because you think the ones that are using a device or using sign language or whatever the case, or it could be Braille, you know, how can we approach those barriers along, and what would they look like, some of those approaches in doing that? Does it make sense?
It does, yeah. So I'll start with who, you know, because I think this is a big, actually, maybe I'll start with barriers, because I think one of the biggest barriers there is, or maybe the biggest barrier, is just the mindset of the team members, right? Of the case manager, sometimes of the parents, in terms of really wanting students to be a part of their meeting, to know all about their disability, to maybe know all about what their role is in that space, and to think that they can do it. To think that there's room for that, even if they can't do everything, they can't understand everything that's being said at the table, it doesn't mean that they can't take a leadership role in terms of leading the meeting, right? And so in terms of who can do it, I think anyone can do it. And this is why, because there's not this bar up here where it has to be, in order to call it a student-led IEP, they have to be doing everything at the meeting themselves, right? And so I think about it this way, and this is what I mean about a simple but not easy shift. You meet your students where they're at in terms of however they can participate or communicate. Whatever system they're using for communication, that's the system that you bring to their IEP team or to the IEP table, and that's how they communicate. So I have students, you know, who need to, they shut down. I've worked with students who have like selective mutism, right? We make a video for them to present at their IEP meeting because in the moment they might get too nervous. If they need to use a communication device, then you prep and you prepare and you practice with their communication device, and you just think about it in terms of how do they communicate? How can we maximize their participation in the meeting? And so, and I know I've seen like a question in the Q&A, like, do you have any, what about students with Down syndrome? Because I know there's a lot of talk about students with autism, and in my perspective and in my career, I work with all types of students and all types of disabilities, and I do it with everyone. And I just try to think about it in terms of, it's not if a student can do it, it's how do we maximize their participation at the meeting? And that's the shift, that's the mindset shift. And then you put the pieces into place because you know the student and you know the parent. And so you have to start with, where are we starting from? What's the goal is to maximize, and then presuming competence, right? I want to assume I want to make the least dangerous assumption. So the least dangerous assumption is that yes, they can do this. And now I just have to figure out how. How do I support them? What do we need to do ahead of time? Sometimes I have a student that I only need to have 1 or 2 meetings with ahead of time and a role play, and they're ready to go. They've been waiting for this moment, you know, kind of like Ethan, they're like, I want to run my IEP meeting. Thank you very much. Pass the mic. And some students you have to really, you know, you have to practice and prepare for a long time. And that's okay because it's worth it. It's one of the biggest shifts that I've seen, especially in terms of, you know, a lot of high school students, I work in high school, before this happened, they feel like the IEP is something that's happening to them, not even for them, to them, right? A lot of times, here's a bunch of grownups in a room. I'm going to get a list of things I'm not doing well enough. This is especially for students that have developed a stigma around having an IEP or needing an IEP, right? And so they look at these IEP meetings as something they have to endure if they've been going to them in the first place. Yeah. Some of them haven't, right? Because there's a big spectrum of whether students have been attending, how engaged they are. And I think once you just start to help them see that these are their people that are there to support them, and they need to start thinking about how they're going to run that, then yeah, that makes a big difference in terms of how they engage with the meeting and how they engage with those people. So barriers are the mindset, for sure. Communication, time is always a barrier. Yes. You know, I had to sort of talk to my other service providers, my teachers and things, and be like, you know, meetings might be a little longer. I think meetings are already, you know, a little long sometimes. If we add 10 minutes to it, but the whole thing is student-centered, that's worth the 10 minutes, right? There's no question about that. And even people that were like, oh, I don't have 10 more minutes, right? Once they attend a student-led IEP, they're like, yep, that was so enjoyable. Because listening to students talk instead of listening to me talk, everybody would choose that. That's
good. Right? Thank you, Kristen. Thank you. I like that. I had a few more questions, but we're going to have to move forward. So I'm hoping we're able to get to them towards the end, because I think that is really important, because the mindset part is important. But if we can remember when we get ready to do questions, I think the next one will be big towards the end when we have that time, is that's easy to change the mindset of people, the families, but we want to change the mindset of the professionals we're with. So remember that when we're towards the end, because I think that would be a good question to help families to be able to do that too. Thank you again. We're going to move on. Sorry, guys, we're moving so fast. This is really enriched, good information, right? So next up, we're going to introduce Tracy. Tracy is a professional who loves fighting and rooting for the underdog and underserved, underrepresented, marginalized, disenfranchised, or if you completely be honest, the oppressed. She is a parent of 3 children, and they're in their 20s and have been advocating for her oldest daughter, who is 26, who is diagnosed with cerebral palsy, epilepsy, and intellectual disabilities for over 20 years. She is an independent facilitator, an STP coach, a personal coach. Tracy is certified in DV advocacy, a person-centered thinker, sexuality educator, a trainer of individuals of developmental disabilities, and a coach. She also certified in cultural humility. She sits on her self-determination advisory committee for the San Gabriel Panama Regional Center and her daughter's self-determination. She also has a master's degree in human behavior and loves empowering individuals to create meaningful and purposeful lives. She is also very passionate about educating young girls on healthy relationships and dating violence. And Tracy believes everyone should have an access to resources and means to meet their needs and have a happy and healthy life free from violence and abuse of all kinds. Welcome, Tracy, today.
Thank you, Benita. Thank
So
you.
my first question for you, which you and I are both passionate about, is everyone must know about what person-centered planning is. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, Kristen answered it. Student-led IEPs is just, that's what it is, person-centered planning. It is a mindset shift. And if I'm completely honest, when Dr. Elizabeth was first presenting and she talked about the medical model in terms of fixing them, it's a mindset that you go home with. And if I'm being completely transparent, as my first child who was born with a disability, I went home with that same medical model. And how do I fix her? And it followed her for years, and there was no student-led IEP. So I go in there, how do we fix her? She has these issues. She can't sit still. She's loud. She falls all the time. All of these things. And how do we fix this? And now that she's 26 years old, and I have been educated, and I have gone through all these person-centered thinking trainings and planning, and become an independent facilitator for other families, it's simple, as Kristen said, but it's not easy. So you shift your mindset to person-centered planning, making them the center of your planning. So their thoughts, their desires, their abilities, their concerns, their goals, their dreams, and you create a plan around them. We all hear so often, nothing about us without us, nothing about them without them. So just creating that plan with them being at the center, that is person-centered planning.
I like that. Thank you. So with person-centered planning, is it a good idea for everyone? Because I know that if we think about as parents, it's part of an IEP, and you're talking about your child. So you know that I think this is something we should have did a while back, but is it for everyone?
It is for everyone. It is for everyone. And like that one question that was asked in the beginning was, is it too late for me to, and Dr. Elizabeth, no, it's not too late. Okay, I wasn't doing person-centered planning for a lot of years, and I can sit here and I can talk about how guilty I feel about not having done it for all the years of her life. And I can get emotional, unlike Gina, who went in there advocating in kindergarten. I did not have that ability. I wanted to protect her. I wanted to make sure she was okay. I wanted to fix her. I wanted her to be included and feel included. And I probably did her a disservice, not allowing her to advocate for herself and having her own voice, because mom was creating this plan around what I thought was best for her. And although I can beat myself up, and parents, please don't do it, simply make the shift, right? So now that we're doing it, it is for everyone. And as Kristen stated, you allow them to come with their level of what that looks like, their level of communication, their level of participation. Encourage that, meet them where they are. Everyone can advocate for themselves to some degree. It's about really making that shift and asking clarifying questions, paying attention to expressions and body language, identifying when you can see that something, they're excited about something, they don't like something, and then letting them guide it that way. It is for everyone. It is really positioning individuals to be able to advocate for themselves to any degree, minimal degree, advanced level degree, but really positioning their loved ones to a place of self-advocacy.
So can I just say thank you for being vulnerable? I think that, we as parents, it hits us all here. So I appreciate your honesty and being vulnerable to a multitude of people, even though it's just us right here, but we have a multitude that are listening. And so my hat's off for you for being vulnerable to say where you're at. With that being said, Tracy, when you said where you were, the next question is going to be in regards to, since and it's almost like you're talking to your younger self, right? What advice would you give to parents and caregivers, even yourself, your younger self, if you could, the caregivers that feel like, so the ones that feel like they know what is best for their child?
I always, your voice matters as a parent. Your voice matters, your concerns matter, they're legitimate. And they should be a part of the plan. When you think about, when you're talking to a parent, really it's about their concerns are typically centered around health and safety. So we want our individuals to be safe. We want them to be healthy. So their voice matters. But what I did for my daughter for so many years was it was not person-centered. So with a focus on health and safety, and my voice really being the center of what I wanted for her life, I missed out on the opportunity of this meaningful life that I'm just so inspired for her to have now, making sure everything is person-centered and she's included and she's at the center of everything. So it's just missing out on the meaningful parts, the purposeful parts. I don't want parents to leave here thinking that with something being person-centered, that their voice as a parent or a caretaker is not included in that plan. It is included in that plan, but let's highlight the individual's strengths and abilities and desires and goals, and see what it is that they want to do, want to achieve, put a plan in place to make that happen for them, and include all the safety measures and precautions and health and safety concerns in that plan so that they can be successful when trying to reach their goals.
Thank you for that. My last question, it would be to you, is that what are the advantages and disadvantages of person-centered planning?
Okay, when I was trying to ask myself that question, I couldn't find the disadvantages. So the advantages were that your individual affords more autonomy, they become empowered, they gain confidence in their ability to make decisions, they make choices of their own preferences, they learn what they like and what they don't like, they learn to know and believe in themselves. They know what they want in the future and make plans to achieve those goals. They learn to know and ask for the support they need to achieve their goal. They develop the ability to monitor and regulate their own action. They make the wrong decision, the wrong choice, and learn from that mistake, and then make a different choice next time. Greater self-determination outcomes with person-centered planning, which is associated with better adult outcomes for youth with disabilities. Essential characteristics of self-determined individuals predicts higher quality of life. So the only disadvantages really were related to me as a parent. And I'm gonna make this personal because I don't want any parent to feel attacked, and I can't see anybody out there but you guys anyway. So the parent might lose control, right? Because my child is making their own decisions. I might not like their choice. That's another disadvantages for me, not the person. And the parent feels like they can't protect them. So my daughter is making decisions on her own, and I can't protect her. But you know what? How many of us make decisions and mess up and make mistakes and then have to learn and then make a new decision? And so we shouldn't, they shouldn't be excluded from that whole life process. So the disadvantages are for us as parents or caretakers or individuals because we don't have that control. And it's very hard and challenging, but the benefits for the individual far outweigh the disadvantages for parents and caretakers. And I'm sorry for anybody that disagrees.
I could just say thank you because I had to include myself in there. So I did, that was.
And I still do it.
Yes.
It's ongoing. I still do it. I want to protect her. I want to keep her safe. I still have to check myself, do that mindset shift. Okay, Tracy, she's 26 years old. There's things that she's doing. I mean, she has 2 typical developing siblings. Why shouldn't she be able to do some of the same activities? Just have some support in place for her to do it. It's an ongoing, forever learning process, but I really want her to be able to have a life that she loves, that's meaningful and purposeful, and she's in control of.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Tracy.
you. Thank you.
again for participating. Thank you. So we're going to go on to our next one, which is Jenny. And so I'm going to read a little bit about who she is, and then we're going to ask a few questions, okay? Jenny is a financial aid technician at Mendocino College. She was born with cerebral palsy, using a walker for most of her day-to-day life. She is an immigrant from China. She moved to the States at the age of 15 with the hopes of pursuing her education and helping others doing so as well. During her time at the community college, she was appointed to the board of governors of the California Community College, where she found her passion for education and advocacy. After the time on the board, she served as vice chair on the State Council of Disabilities and now council member of the State Independent Council, serving as our governance committee chair. Jenny, welcome today.
Thank you.
I'm going to start off with questions for you. The first question would be, at the high school and community college level, what barriers did you face navigating the system to getting support you needed, and what strategies and supports was most helpful?
I think both in the high school system and also the community college level, the tougher challenges is, again, I do use a walker, but I wasn't given a walker until probably my senior year of high school. So prior to that, I depended on my classmates who would help me walk from class to class. And as you know, that there's only limited minutes to get from one class to another. So that was probably the tougher challenge for me. So teachers will let me leave early by like 5 minutes. That way I can go to my next class without being troubled by students and everybody running from one place to the next. And I did have an IEP. I did have help with Department of Vocal Rehab. So they were able to put certain things in place. For a community college, I was able to use note takers if I needed, because I do not write as fast as most people, and I was not able to keep up with most of the notes. However, later on in my college career, I did learn different ways to take notes to where I'm able to do it on my own instead of having someone to take notes for me. Mm-hmm. As you guys probably know, that people learn differently. So some notes might work for another individual, might not work for me. So I had to find ways to just take notes to where I understand and I'm able to keep up with the classwork. And so I think just getting from one class to the next was one of my tougher challenges, as is something that basically I cannot walk as fast as most people, and I do need assistance. With cerebral palsy, balance is a bigger challenge for me. So that was a little bit hard to navigate. I didn't even realize there was such things as walkers and such until like a year into high school. Because I can't use crutches. Again, the balance being part of the issue. So yeah. Sorry, I hope that answers the question.
No, I did. Now I'm going to go through these, but I'm pretty sure other people have some to elaborate because I'm excited to ask questions, but it's not about me. So I'm going to keep it moving. We know that self-advocacy is very important, right? And can you tell us a little bit about your journey with self-advocacy and how that has developed for you over time?
I think self-advocacy is very important because I feel like when I came into the States in 2002, I did not have the right language skills to advocate for myself necessarily at the time. However, I think a lot of things was assumed about me. Like they assumed because LCP, therefore I must need lower level classes. So I was putting classes that was way under what I was supposed to be part of. But because of language barrier, they thought that might be best. Like I was playing pre-algebra for math, but I was definitely way above that level. So once the teachers got to know me and know my skills, they recommended, I be moved to a higher level class. Of course, my English skills was not up to par to those classes. So there was a balance act of what can she understand and intellectually where should she be. So I feel like in the beginning there were a lot of things assumed by me because I did not have the proper language skill or the knowledge to self-advocate for myself, instead having people tell me where I should be at or what classes I should be in. So I think once I learned more about that, I become more outspoken and more advocating for myself and letting them know where I should be at. Like in high school, I was playing English class where they were teaching English using Spanish, which was not very helpful to me as someone who didn't speak either language. So it's definitely more confused than learning. So I went through ESL classes pretty fast. And then I was asked what classes I wanted to be in after that. So I chose to be in, sophomore English as a senior because that's where my English level was at. I could also choose senior English, which would push me through the system, but I didn't feel like it would help me educationally to learn the language. So I chose to be in class with mostly sophomores, but it was where my English level needed to be. Same with math and other sciences. I was very good with chemistry, even though my English wasn't up to par, but chemistry, there's a lot of math and experiments and so on. So that was what worked best for me. And I started definitely learning more how to advocate for myself, what classes I want to be in, what are my interests, and what will benefit me in the long run. Instead, I didn't just want to graduate high school. I want to be at the level where I need to be when I graduate to go to college. So I think that's where I learned how to advocate for myself. And that's where I kind of grew, like knowing that I could actually advocate for myself, because before that I didn't know, I didn't understand the system. I was also from a country where I wasn't really allowed to go to school because of my condition, and they were worried about different things. So, once I learned I was actually able to advocate for myself, I definitely starting more of it.
I appreciate you saying that because that's a powerful statement to say that you weren't allowed to go. Because I think here, we know that the things that we think that we fight for, we don't realize when people come from other countries, it's not even an option. So I thank you for sharing that. And I actually thank you for being here to sharing your story, because I think it's important for all of us to hear the different struggles that happen when people come in not knowing the language and not having the same type of opportunities that we have here in the United States. So thank you for sharing that part. I'm learning a lot from
You're welcome. I think I started treating it like a privilege, and then I started seeing it as my right that I belong there. And then I started definitely advocating more about what I want and what I need.
Yes. So I have a few more questions for you, if that's okay. All right.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So you might have did a little bit, but explain a little bit about your support system and how it helped you to reach your goal, like, family and other support systems that you kind of either developed through school or even friends.
Yeah, I think my support system started as being in school, because I live in Ukiah, California. It's a very small community, and I feel like I get a lot more support because we're so small. And I had a very supportive TPP specialist who definitely was listening to me, to what I want and what I need, instead the other way around. I always had an interest in working and going to school. I want to be independent as far as financially and the earner education, to where I can support myself. So I definitely had a lot of support in the beginning from Department of Local Rehab. They helped me with interview prep, interview close, working, internships, to where I can learn a lot of skills that needed in the future. And I also have a great support system with the teachers and friends. Like I said, I'm coming from a very small community, so I feel like everybody bound together and support one another. I don't feel like I was just one of the many who just needed to get through the system. And I understand that in bigger communities, sometimes that's the way it is, because there's so little workers to so many students. But to me, I never felt that way. I never felt like I was just a number. I didn't feel like I was just someone who needed to be get through the system and then being, out there in the world. So I feel like I did have a lot of that. And I had a lot of, I apologize. I had a lot of great professors and mentors along the way who helped me with things I needed. As I stated before, I am an immigrant, so my family doesn't really know the system very well or how to navigate. So I definitely had a lot of support from mentors, teachers, and other people to help me along the way. And I feel like being part of the community, I'm really proud of what kind of I have grown up, since I didn't get here till I was 15, because of the supportiveness and the openness, I don't think person-centered planning was as forefront at the time when I went to high school, but I feel like I was very much included in those conversations and in what I want to do and what I want in the future. So
Okay.
I feel like I was very lucky in that.
My final question to you is for all the people that are kind of out there listening. What advice would you give to share with others to pursue further education outside of high school or employment if they didn't want to go to college after high school?
I feel like a lot of people, especially kids with disabilities, they grow up fighting the challenge of, oh, you can't do this, or oh, you won't be able to do that. Oh, you can only choose from limited, job options or school options to do. But I feel like that mindset is changing within the system, within the supportive services, everyone else, because it's more focused on person-centered planning. But I feel like for me, I grew up with great grandparents who taught me that, I can achieve anything I want that I put my mind to. I just have to work 10 times as harder as most people. So I was never told no. I was just told I perhaps have to work harder to achieve those goals compared to a, neurotypical individual. So I feel like that mindset is what drove me into succeeding and achieving things I want in life. So I feel like I would like to share that with others as well, is that you could achieve anything you put your mind to. You might have to work a little harder, but don't let people tell you that you can't do something just because your disability or, your challenges, because those things you can overcome with the support and working hard to achieve them. And, that's why I'm still doing, what I do, because I want to show people that, if you put your mind to it, you can do anything you want. Don't let your disability or your condition define who you are and who you can become, but you can become whoever you want to be just you have to work hard. People will tell you no along the way, but you have to believe in yourself and just keep going.
Got it. Thank you today for being a part, and thank you for the words in your story that you have shared. It truly is true. Go beyond that
You're
now.
welcome.
But thank you again. So
Thank you.
our last panelist is Jackie, and I'll share you a little bit about Jackie, and then we're going to ask her a few questions. And then after that, we'll get the questions from the audience. So Jackie is an autistic PhD candidate in rehabilitation science at the University of Alberta. She holds a master's degree in leadership from Rowell Rhodes University, where she researches on leadership and to promote self-determination of individuals with autism, won the University Founders Award. Her doctorate research is on understanding autonomy and autonomy support from perspective of an autistic adult with intellectual disabilities using the community-based participatory research approach. Jackie works for a large multidisciplinary not-for-profit autism service provider in, sorry if I pronounce this wrong, Eton, the Center of Autism Services, Alberta, where she created Quest for Independence and innovative post-secondary transition programs for young adults with ASD focused on teaching skills of independence. She is also a mom of an autistic young adult son. Welcome today.
Thank you.
How are you today?
Pretty good, thanks.
So we're going to start with my first question. Great. We'll start with our first question. Why should we take time to include autistic people who also have an intellectual disability or have trouble expressing their inner thoughts and feelings in their IEP or person-centered planning sessions when their parents know them best? You're talking to me now.
Yeah. So that's really the challenge, isn't it? It's much easier to ask parents and it takes less time. And who has extra time? However, self-determination is a fundamental human right. And that's been confirmed in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Self-determination refers to being in control of your life. So you're making decisions and choices free from undue external control. So we all consult other people when we're making decisions. And sometimes we even make decisions because other people want us to make that decision, but we still maintain control of our lives. And so we need to help autistic individuals with other disabilities to have that same kind of control over their own life. Practically, self-determination has been shown to improve quality of life. But research also shows that autistic people are less self-determined than their peers, including peers with developmental disabilities. And this isn't because of their autism. This is because we don't ask them or we don't agree with their goals. And so as parents, we know our children are likely to outlive us. And being self-determined is one way to actually help ensure their safety and happiness when we're gone. And so we have this dilemma. So I have guardianship over my young adult son, and I need to balance his right for self-determination and what I think is best for him with what is most important to him. So that's why we want to take the time.
I got, I'm working on that one.
Me too.
I'm a work in progress.
Yeah.
My next one for you is, how can we promote self-determination for autistic people who also have intellectual disabilities or have trouble expressing their inner thoughts and feelings in their IEPs or person-centered plan session?
I wish I had a really easy answer for this. There isn't one. And that's part of why my doctoral research is exploring autonomy and how to support autonomy for autistic adults who also have an intellectual disability. Also thinking about autistic people, and oftentimes they have difficulty making choices or decisions. Some of the challenges around executive functioning might be impeding their ability to make decisions. Autistic people who are perfectionists, who get frozen and don't want to make a decision until they know it's the perfect decision, maybe don't have opportunities to practice, or they feel rushed. So my work is grounded in Ryan and Deasy's self-determination theory that basically says we all need to feel competent, we need to feel a sense of belonging or relatedness, and we need to feel autonomous in order to thrive and be self-determined. And this theory's got a really large body of work that supports it. It's been found to be true across cultures and with people with disabilities as well. And so if we want to promote self-determination, we can help individuals to achieve each of those 3 basic psychological needs. And so some of the ways we can do that, so we can promote competence by making sure that we're giving them the just right challenge. So it's not too easy and it's not too difficult, which can be really hard to do. And it involves you knowing the person that you're working with. You can provide structure within their days, help identify barriers and develop mitigating strategies. Make sure you're building on their strengths, scaffold to support success, and promote a positive autistic identity, and allow time for them to complete the task. Promoting relatedness, things that we can do is make sure that we're devoting time and showing interest in individuals, being caring and supportive, unconditional positive regard, and being genuine. And I just have to say in here as well that within inclusive communities, and I'm very pro-inclusion, it's really important, I think, for autistic people to meet other autistic people. I was a late diagnosed autistic person, and I've only known for about 8 years, and it has been life-changing for me to meet other autistic people who have doctorates or are in the process of getting that. They understand my journey like nobody else does. And then autonomy. So one of the first things is to make sure that the person has a functional communication system and that it's available to them. And this is something I just recently learned. Other people maybe know this, and maybe I'm late to the party, but when somebody uses a device and they need to type their responses into the device, it's actually rude and considered interrupting to talk while they are typing their answer. And so we need to become comfortable with silence. And so silence for individuals who are using an AAC device, but it's also good for students or people who need extra processing time. When we start talking to fill that space, as sometimes we're want to do, we impede their ability to communicate with us. We also want to make sure that we're offering meaningful choices, and we need to start doing that young. And my journey was not unlike Tracy's, where I wanted to fix my son initially, and for a long time. And so he maybe didn't get choices at that young age, but that's started at the young age, and then they can they'll grow up with more of that voice to want to be self-determined. And we want to encourage anytime that they do show initiative or exert their voice, however their voice is delivered. And we also want to make sure that we nurture their interests, even if their interests seem kind of weird to us. My son, for example, is really interested in toilets, which is odd for a 26-year-old man. But when we go new places, the first thing he wants to do is check out the bathroom. And once he's done that, he's pretty darn happy where we're at. So Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think that sometimes that could be kind of good considering coming out of a pandemic, whenever it's a kind of a good kind of niche to kind of have, to be honest with you. The one kind of final question, because you went into the last question. So I noticed you made a comment in regards to promote competency. What would you say, just for in the last few minute or so, would be a few things you could suggest to people who, I know we have members on here who we get it as parents to do that, but what would you suggest for someone who does not get that, to kind of just one or two things to help promote to competency in people?
Yeah. So I think it's really important to know the person that you're supporting, be it your son or daughter or your student, whatever, so that you know what their strengths are. And working from their strengths is a really good way to build their sense and their feeling of competency. And so one example of that, and I don't know about other parents, but when my son was little, I was so used to telling the system all about his challenges that if somebody asked me what his strengths were, I stumbled for answers. Not because he doesn't have strengths, but just because my mind was so fixated on challenges. And so one of the tools that I really like, it's called a one-page profile. And there's a sample, or not a sample, there's a template on the Padlet for today, but it's a really strengths-based document, and from the person's perspective, so we can learn about what's important to them, not just for them. And so an example there is, it's really important to my son that he has Coke. It's really important for him that he not have too much Coke. And so we're constantly balancing that. I'll tell you right now, we don't have the answer. I don't know if we're ever going to have the answer, but we continue to work on it.
That's all right. We can keep talking about it. So to the panelists, I thank you all. We have gone through all of them. We have quite a few questions. So I'm going to do my best in these last 10 minutes or so to answer the questions that we have, some that are individualized, what have you. So you guys kind of bear with me as I find them and read through them. But I want to thank you on the behalf of UC Davis Mind Institute for being a part of this. It was phenomenal. I learned so much. I'm sorry if you felt rushed. Just was trying to get through to make sure we get all this rich information for everyone. So we're going to start off, okay? Our first question is for you, Tracy. It says, Tracy, it says, as a person with autism, I ask, how do you teach the recognition of self-advocacy needed for an autistic person when often they don't even recognize the problem specifically?
As a person with autism?
Yes, as a person with autism, I ask, is what the person stated. Would you like me to read it again?
Yes.
So it says, as a person with autism, I ask, how do you teach? And I guess this could be for anyone. It says, how do you teach the self-recognition for self-advocacy needed to the autistic person when often they don't even recognize the problem specifically? So actually we could open up to everybody, to be honest, because I didn't think all of you guys can answer that.
I can kind of
Gina raised her hand.
Okay, go ahead.
As a parent, well, for Ethan, he did not have verbal language until later on in grammar school. And as a parent, you certainly don't want to point out your child's difficulties and where they're having challenges. But in order for them to recognize it and understand what something may be difficult for them, is you have to point it out, right? So throughout the years, it was he had a difficult time writing. Okay, so he had occupational therapy, all these things to help him with writing, and it was just more and more and more of a challenge for him. And so just helping him recognize, there's other ways of expressing what you want to say other than writing. So in his IEP, getting the group together, we started working on keyboarding skills instead of writing. And he really enjoyed that and he excelled at it. And he was able to then type out what he wanted so much faster than writing out what he wanted. And that it was passed into the accommodations in his IEP. Instead of, writing a 500-page essay, in cursive, he was able to create a PowerPoint, type it out, be creative.
Right.
And that kind of infused into the classroom to where all the students then were like, hey, that looks like fun. And so then they were all doing their PowerPoint presentations. That's just an easy example. But just, throughout the years, he then, and in his IEP, he would speak up about that. Ethan doesn't like writing. He recognized it as a challenge instead of always just dealing with it and trying to do it. So it's, as a parent, and also when I spoke with the teachers, I would let them know the things that were difficult for him, and for them to support that and find alternative ways of having him become successful, and recognizing that he needs to ask for that in order for that success to happen. And it doesn't happen overnight. He didn't lead his own IEP and fully advocate for himself and saying he wanted to be the boss of his IEP until his senior year. So kindergarten to senior year, it takes a village. It takes every teacher, general education, special education, all the therapists working together collaboratively as a team. And as a parent, it was teaching Ethan too, the right people to ask the questions to, or the right people to go to, the safe people. And so he would bring his people together at school, and I would help him learn how to do that. So it's just, it's a tiered approach. It takes years. It takes different people. He had several speech therapists, several occupational therapists throughout the year. It's just making those bridges along the way, so you're not starting down here. It's like, okay, this is where we are, and this is where we need to go.
And what I will add to that, that's good, Gina, is asking clarifying questions. So that is now like my thing. Like, why do you say that? What do you think about that? Well, what are your thoughts about that? And just allowing them to express why they are asking that question, why they are thinking the way that they're thinking, just for dialogue. Something is, why do you like art? Oh, it encourages me. Oh, I didn't know that it encouraged you. What is it about art that encourages you? And then it's like they're developing it as they speak because they're being asked the questions. So I would say ask clarifying questions and develop that.
Both. Thank you both. I appreciate that. Kristen, I have a few for you, and I'm going to kind of read them off. This one is, it says, how can we support students who are nonverbal or do not exhibit cognitive ability to do so by leading or discuss, or by do so in leading and decision-making during IEP? That's the first one. Do you want me to read it again? I kind of
No, I saw it too. And
okay.
I just want to say, I didn't know what I was supposed to go through. I'm long-winded, that always me. So I just wanted to mention to everyone first that I have some resources on the Padlet. And typically where I start is similar to kind of what Gina said, having students get used to sharing about themselves. So I think, like having a moment in the IEP where they're talking about who they are and what they like. You can start that, as soon as you can get started with that, right? And whatever level they're able to with a communication device. It means that prepare the communication device with some of the answers to those questions. You may need to practice how to do that. And you need to make some space, like Jackie said, to have them answer it the way that they need to answer it. You can also prepare a video ahead of time so that you can edit some of those long wait times out if you feel like that's going to be a really big barrier in the meeting. But I always sort of, I think starting with the small pieces. So I know people, and this is what I did when I think about student-led IEPs, I go straight to, well, how are students going to make their own decisions about placements and report on their own progress on goals, right? That's not where you start. You hope you get there someday, right? But you start with, welcome to my IEP meeting. I'm Kristen Uliasz, and this is my IEP meeting, right? Rather than me saying, welcome to, now I've got lost in my metaphor, but welcome to Kristen Uliasz's IEP meeting. She wants to be a teacher when she grows up. That's not where you have to start with centering and the little transitions, having them introduce people, which you can program a communication device. And when I was an elementary school teacher, that was often a first communication goal, was like having all the names of their teachers and classmates on their communication device. This is my, this is my teacher. This is my speech therapist. She teaches me how to communicate. So having them facilitate some of those in between transition pieces, the introductions, the welcome, okay, now we're going to talk about my goals. That doesn't mean they have to be the one talking about their goals, right? That doesn't mean that they can't. It just means that, think about the places where you could give up that power. And then you think about what are their skills in their communication device, and how could we use that to, it may be that you need to be the one facilitating. Okay, I want to hear from, Benita about where she wants to go after high school. And that's a question you ask, and there's an answer to it on a communication device that you've practiced. So that would be some of the, I don't have a ton of experience with communication devices in student-led IEPs, but I do have experience with communication devices in other settings. And I do think that it's very doable. You just have to think about, how do they communicate? How can I set up this communication to give them the space to do it in the meeting? Or before the meeting, and record it so you have it available at the meeting. It's just really important to make space for student voices.
So Kristen, let me throw this at you while you're on the roll with that, because this is going to tie into that too, because while we're doing that for people who are minimal speaking, non-speaking, the next follow-up question says, is because while we're talking about them addressing it, how are they going to address these behaviors and deficit and skills in this student-led IEP, along with they ask that question, how to do that. And when you're thinking about when they do that, then how does you find the response for the students to address these topics, and what strategies, any strategies you have to be able to do that? Because, we all know that we have that in some IEPs when you're discussing addressing behaviors.
So this is a complicated answer, because again, there's a spectrum, right? And I think this is true whether students are leading their IEPs or just attending them, that we need to be thoughtful about how we talk about this kind of stuff, and what they have to listen to or hear in what way, right? We need to be, competent and do things legally, but we also need to think about how we're presenting things to students. As a case manager, I start with when students have behaviors or things, any skills that they need to address, I start by telling them about myself, and how if I had a case manager, that case manager would make me do these things differently because I procrastinate and I get distracted and I do this, and these are the tools I use and these are the things I do, so that it kind of normalizes, like, we talk about our strengths and we also talk about things we need support with, and everybody needs those things. It's not just you. We just have this whole team meeting to talk about you. We're not going to talk about me at the meeting. We're talking about you. But listen, if I had a case manager, they'd have 27 goals for me, right? And so that's one aspect. The other thing is that I think priming team members with, this, if there's a behavior support specialist, they actually usually know very well to talk to students about challenging behaviors, right? So how do we phrase things so that a student shouldn't, most of the time, a student knows that something's being addressed, right? So if they have a behavior that is being addressed in some way, then you talk to them about it in the way it's being addressed, and then you before the meeting, right? So they're comfortable with it. Maybe try to get some perspective on them. Why do you feel like you need to do this? What do you feel like is working and not working? The way that you're approaching that goal in general can come to light in the meeting. I think it helps people not to have the student be involved in the conversation and not just attending. When a student is just attending and not part of the conversation, often we start really quickly talking about them in front of them instead of to them, right? So shift just makes us think about how we say things a little bit more, slow down and kind of make it concrete, make it a little bit more respectful. Those are all good things. And the IEP meeting where that is student-led, that isn't the only place you can talk to parents about what's actually going in the IEP. It's not the only place you can collaborate with other stakeholders about what's actually going in the IEP. It's just sort of, I think about it like the presentation and the collaborative meeting part of the IEP. So it can get more complicated, right? And it can, and you can decide what do I want to make sure, some parents want to know all kinds of data and clear things in depth about a behavior that you may not have time to go into in a meeting anyway. I like to prepare things ahead of time and talk about it, and then I usually when I'm sending the paperwork to parents, I will elaborate on things. This is what we talked about in the meeting. And remember, these are the approaches we're going to have. So again, I think that you have to take it case by case and just really think about how do we maximize the student's role in here. And I do think it makes you kind of pause and think about how you're describing things. And that's a good thing in most cases.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very detailed. Thank you. So we have one more question, and it could be for Jenny and Jackie and I'm going to kind of put it out there because we have a few more minutes left to either one of you would like to jump in on this. It says, what are some thoughts, recommendations when the beliefs or opinions of support providers on a team or a lack of support for administrators get in the way? For example, when they believe that the student can participate or won't be able to, or it will take too long or cost too much.
I think it's about what's important. I know that that's a conversation because I've been on different boards where people do talk about that, but I feel like it's about what will benefit the individual, the student. It will take a little longer, schedule a little bit longer. I feel like the student and the families for the student need to advocate for that because it's about what will benefit the student, will make the student or the individual feel they're included, they're in charge of their own meeting and what they want. I mean, that's been talked about before. Group of people could be coming in together with everything at the right heart, talk about this one person, but it doesn't really matter if that's not what this person need. So I feel like it's very important that the individual is being included. Even if it does take long, it might take a little bit longer. It might cost a little bit more, but in the long run, you're not spending money on something that this person doesn't even want, or make a plan that this person might not even be interested in. So in the long run, it saves more resources and money and everything else, and time if you just give that individual the ability and the time to decide what they want in the first place. I'm sorry.
That's all right. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to give it back to Auburn at this time. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much. I could listen to you all for the rest of the day. So thank you for all your insights.
The UC Davis Mind Institute was founded in 1998 with a promise to reduce and prevent the disabilities that can be associated with autism and other neurodevelopmental conditions. Every day, our clinicians and researchers make progress on that promise. Our groundbreaking research on autism, Fragile X syndrome, chromosome 22q11.2 deletion syndrome, ADHD, and other conditions associated with disability are helping affected individuals achieve their fullest potential. Please visit our website or our social media platforms to find out more about current studies, upcoming events, and how you can help make a difference.